Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Universal Show, a Diz Unlimited podcast. I am Ryno.
I'm Chloe.
I know. I let you say your name without me introducing yourself this week.
Wow.
We are going to be having a fun discussion today, continuing on from an episode that we did not too long ago, where we're going to be putting some Walt Disney World attractions head-to-head with some Universal Islands of Adventure attractions.
Juicy.
Yes, I can't wait to see where we all lie on that, because we know the attractions, but we didn't talk about which we think would win beforehand. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody that this and everything that we do here is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel. They are experts at helping you plan the perfect Universal vacation. When you book with them, it costs you nothing extra on your trip, and you help support the channel and all the content that we produce here. So check them out, dreamsunlimitedtravel.com, for a free, no obligation quote today. It is also brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Hey! We couldn't do this without you. So if you want to learn more about how you can get exclusive content from different members of the Diz team, you can head over to patreon.com/DizUnlimited. Now that I've said all of that, Chloe, we're just going to dive into it today. There's a hurricane bearing down on us.
There is.
So we've got to get out of here. We've got to go do this. But we said we definitely wanted to record a Universal episode this week to make sure that we had some fun content out there for some people to consume. We understand, what it can be like to be really, nervous and anxious, and that, we've gotten some really positive messages where people have said, like, hey, thank you for that, this gets me through whatever. And so, sometimes it's like, it feels really silly, but it's also like, sometimes it's the thing that somebody needs. And so if we can help ease anybody's day out there, we're happy to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So last time we did this, what we did is basically we went through the attractions at Universal Studios Florida, and we found the comparable attractions at Walt Disney World. So there are some attractions that there is no matching attraction to go with it in terms of like the ride vehicle or the type of story that it's telling or anything like that. So that is the case with Island of Adventure. Like, I'll just say right off the top is that with Harry Potter and the Escape from...
Forbidden Journey.
Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, that there is no comparable attractions at
There is no Kuka arm at Walt Disney World.
Yes,
Come
essentially. So we kind of are just going to skip those, but there are some attractions where there's only one at Walt Disney World, but there's two at Universal, and so that's kind of the rules. It's a similar type of attraction, exploring a story, telling a story in a similar way.
Exactly.
So Chloe's got the list. She's going to kick us off. What do we got, Chloe?
First up, we have Jurassic World Velocicoaster versus Expedition Everest.
I mean, for me, it's going to be Velocicoaster.
Yeah. This was a tough one to figure out what would be the coinciding coaster because Velocicoaster is so new. I naturally went to like Guardians of the Galaxy, but they're completely different. These are two outdoor coasters, and there's a couple of surprise elements for each of them. I gotta go with Velocicoaster though.
I think they're
love Everest,
also respectively the most. I don't want to say the word intense, but they are. They're the most extreme of their type of attraction in the park. They are outdoor roller coasters with some small interior portions of it. They're both kind of themed around like a beast,
Beast escaping.
Exactly. And, I think...
high speed.
I think they're kind of comparable in terms of what the story they're telling. I also feel like they're telling story elements in kind of a little bit of a similar way. Like, I feel like Velocicoaster is definitely a little more direct, and it's an IP versus an original story.
Yeah, it's like a coaster through the raptor paddock. What could go wrong? A relaxing train ride through the Himalayas. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do feel like Velocicoaster, I guess, I think it tells the story. I think what's interesting about Velocicoaster is if you're somebody who hasn't done it, I do think this is an excellent coaster. I myself am not usually a very extreme roller coaster person.
Oh, I am.
But it's interesting how the track itself is telling sort of this is lending itself to the story, because in the beginning it's very tight loops, very tight turns, very quick, all like kind of on top of itself because you're still in the paddock, right? And then later you kind of escape the paddock, which is that launch outward and upward, and then those pieces of the track are like longer and a little more sustained, and like, so they're more like the runaway portions where you're like, you know, on the getaway, and the tumble over the water is great. Like, and I feel like it just, so for me, you could also say, well, you know, the Everest, you know, that's, you know, it's great. It fits into its land so well.
Climbing, go back a little bit, and then you loop around to come back down. Or there's a drop, and then you loop around to come back down. So it is also telling a story. You know what I also realized, though? Both of these coasters feature static figures. Shout out Disco Yeti. The Raptors nor the Yeti move at all. They're just there. So
Sound effects,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So
Sound effects. Yeah.
I think ultimately you could back out and be like, okay, well, the detail, you know, that they have, like the land helps tell the story. I think the Jurassic Park area of that land is great too, because you've got the visitor center. Right. It has iconic movie locations. I think the way they design the attraction, the way it looks like the paddock, but then also having the raptor encounter right across the way. I think this is one of their more successful storytelling elements that they have in all of their theme parks. Yeah. So it goes to Velocicoaster.
In terms of coasters, I still can't believe that we have this coaster of this caliber in Orlando, Florida. So it's got to go to
it's got to be the Fritz Bernays.
It's the Fritz Bernays. It's the Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Sorry. Next up, we have Cat in the Hat versus The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
I feel like these are two very whimsical attractions, kind of bouncy, you know, movement involved in them. Definitely like kid oriented and stuff. Whew, this is actually kind of a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay, because for me, if we do back it out of the attraction, because you're like, okay, what are the other elements to tell it? I like Seuss Landing a lot. I think it's a really like intricately decorated and themed area. I think it has it's got its location is better to the actual place where it is than I feel like Winnie the Pooh is, because Winnie the Pooh basically has the tree and it's like the queue, right? And it's in Fantasyland, and I get it, and it filled in an old attraction before, whereas this was built from the ground up. So I understand that, but
you're
like,
walking through the storybooks of the old Winnie the Pooh stories. I grew up on Winnie the Pooh stories, so I'm going to be a little biased on this one.
I grew up on both.
I grew up on both. That's true.
I think it's tight for me. I think like the only thing is like heffalumps. I don't really.
The heffalumps.
They feel like a newer age part of Winnie the Pooh story. But were they always in the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little kid in the 90s, so it's not like I'm like.
Are you still deciphering? Want me to tell you my vote? Will that help you maybe go against the grain?
I think I already know what it is.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cat in the Hat's really fun, but when they took out a lot of the spinning elements, it's not as fun for me. There's like one full spin, maybe two full spins. The attraction used to spin a lot, and there's a lot of scenes where that's apparent. Like it's relying on.
Well, it was negative. It was a negative for me.
The thrill element. That was negative for you that it spun?
I get motion sickness.
Yeah. Well, then you love it now then, because there's barely anything. I love the the Cat in the Hat animatronic that I don't know if he's aged very well, but he's like his eyes are like twitching and he's like tipping off his hat to you as you pass by. It's kind of funny. Okay. I don't want to poo-poo on Cat in the Hat. It is a fun little attraction.
You don't want to Winnie poo-poo on Cat in the Hat?
I don't want to Winnie the poo-poo on Cat in the Hat. But The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is a cute little ride. I love the different elements where when you're hopping with Tigger or you're kind of floating, it feels like you're floating in water in the rainy scene. And then Little Pepper's ghost effect with the Pooh floating up when he's dreaming. And then the Heffalumps and Woozle's crazy trip that is. I really enjoy this ride. I enjoy myself a lot more on Winnie the Pooh. So that wins for me.
I'm actually going to pick Winnie the Pooh. I think in terms of the actual attraction, no, I'd already made up my mind before you started. But I do think in terms of that story, you said the things that I was thinking, where it was about like the motion of the attraction. I feel like it's a little more dynamic storytelling. Yeah. There's some cool effects, and I think they're in that same element though, where they are like cherished childhood stories, you know. But I do think ultimately, think Winnie the Pooh tells, like, it's a little bit more interesting.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the small horror factor in Cat in the Hat, where thing 1 and thing 2, they're like running through the scene and they just look so scary. And then they have one of them like up against the TV, like the scene in Poltergeist. Have you caught that? I love that. So
yeah,
small little shout out for that, but Pooh wins in the end.
All right, so that's one. That's
one for Universal. And
one for Universal.
Disney so
one for
far.
Disney.
Yeah. This next one, we've got Hagrid's Magical Adventure Motorbike.
Fantastic roller coaster.
Hagrid's,
yeah.
Yes. And Tron Light Cycle Run. I don't got to do much thinking here.
I here's the thing. I do really enjoy Tron. I think it is too short. I love the aesthetic of Tron. I love that we have Tron. I think the canopy actually really adds a really nice like color element and lighting package.
And the ride vehicle's cool. Like
yeah.
Everybody gets to ride on the motorcycle in this one. It's not a sidecar and a motorcycle.
And I appreciate that a lot. You know, I love the soundtrack of it all. But I don't think there's any beating Hagrid's, because Hagrid's I think it's just like it's so gorgeous, like the land that it's on, where it's going over the water on these bikes. It also has that beautiful score. Animatronics are in the attraction where it slows. This ride goes up, it falls backwards. It has a drop in it. So the fact that it has unicorns, drops, and all these other different elements of it.
Look, a unicorn. And look, she's a mum.
She's ridden it quite a bit. And I also think the fact that it's an addition to its land that just really, really, it took away something that I think was very beloved by a lot of Universal fans. And I think that it delivered something. You were like, how could you possibly deliver a better experience? And it did. And I think that it's a really cool all ages, sort of coaster experience. I think that one wins. It's not to say I don't love Tron. It's just I think that Hagrid's is just an excellent, and also it gets a lot of points for having animatronics in a roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And Tron does get points for being a whole new attraction. This is one of the few instances where Disney, I almost said Dadney.
We're dad.
I need to take a nap.
Yeah, you talked to your therapist recently? Got some dad issues are popping in here.
Goodness gracious.
It's one of those times where daddy loved me. Wait, what did I say?
It's one of those times that Disney added capacity with a new attraction. So to your point where they, ultimately replaced Dragon Challenge with what is Dueling Dragons, Tron is a whole new thing at Magic Kingdom. I'm sorry, it's not enough for me. Hagrid's is the winner here. I enjoy myself so much more in Hagrid's. I wish Tron was at least 3 times as long. There's so much more to Hagrid's, the animatronics and everything. Both have that motorcycle element, and you might have to, barter to switch off for the sidecar versus the bike with whoever you're going with. But it's do not miss at Islands of Adventure. And Tron, I honestly don't ride that every time I'm at Magic Kingdom. But Hagrid's,
well, you couldn't until recently, so.
True. That's very true.
Well, what you got next?
Next is Jurassic Park River Adventure versus Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
So the reason, you might be asking yourself, why are these paired together? The reason is they're both flume-like attractions, right?
Water drop
attractions, yeah. And technically, story about animals. It's a similar... The actual attraction is a similar type of, like, sort of experience. I know you're like, what? But think about it. It truly is.
I know. At first I had dinosaur on this list, but it kind of felt a little unfair to either, just because the only thing they had in common were dinosaurs. The ride vehicle's completely different. There's no flume. So we had to switch it up.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a nostalgia thing. That's the problem, is that it's hard for me because it's like, oh, well, is it because you just love Jurassic Park that you're going to pick Jurassic Park? I genuinely, I think this ride, dollars for donuts, I think this ride uses its drop element more appropriately than Tiana's Bayou does. And I'm not saying that things have to be scary. I'm not saying it has to be climactic, but I will be 100% honest here. I still get the knot in my stomach when the T-Rex. And in Orlando at Islands of Adventure, we only have like the T-Rex head, like the upper body.
Yeah.
And when I go to Hollywood and it's the full body, it's
chills.
like, it's like I'm
And the Indominus
genuinely
Rex.
scared, genuinely afraid.
And the Indominus Rex
I know, but he was
now.
behind a curtain when I was there, so I couldn't see him.
Babe, we gotta go back.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, chills every time.
But that whole thing, being a part of the story where the park is breaking down and like seeing as it starts to happen and like, you know, go the climb with the raptor and like then you're up there in the sets. I think it's good. Like, you know, yeah, some of the animatronics, like this guy. Old bent neck dino over there, the bent neck lady.
Call Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, that's the inspiration. People may not know this, I think that, you know, some of it could use a little TLC, but ultimately I still think like, okay, in terms of utilizing a rise and a fall and the story
Literally.
it has at hand with the movie that it's telling, which also this is an original story that's adjacent to the movie because we don't see this part in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it wins for me.
I don't have much else to add here. I'm going to agree with you, but I am going to throw out a fun question. Mm-hmm. Let's just pretend it's still Splash Mountain. How would you feel in comparison?
And I'm not a Splash Mountain girly. I just think like
Just the way that
the story is told.
the attraction story was told. Yeah. Thrown into the briar patch and slip and falls and laugh in place. You'd have a harder time, right?
I'd have a harder time, but I think I still would pick Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
But then I think that my nostalgia would be factoring in stronger.
right. It's a little bit harder because of the
Yeah.
nostalgia on both parties.
What do
Yeah.
you think? What would you do?
I'd have to stew on it for a bit.
Put her in the crock pot. She's got a stew. It's okay. You don't have to answer me now.
Yeah. I don't know. This is just like a little bonus question. We don't even have to keep
tough.
this in if we
Yeah.
don't want to. Just curious. Should I go on to the next one?
Yeah, I think so. There's
okay.
a hurricane bearing down.
Yeah. All right. So, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man versus the most similar attraction at Walt Disney World right now, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure.
Isn't it wild? That is the trackless rides that use like a motion simulation, you know, that also have physical environments. I still think Spider-Man is superior.
Spider-Man is, I mean, there are a lot of great attractions at Islands of Adventure. I'm pretty sure Spider-Man is still my favorite of them all.
Spider-Man puts me in a sense of awe.
Yeah.
I still get that feeling. It doesn't matter how many times I've done it. And you know what part it is for me? There's two parts specifically.
The cities, like the
city landscape. So there's a part in the attraction, if you're not familiar, where like you've been hit with a ray that makes you levitate and you just start moving up and like the walls are moving and it's just this really incredible effect where you are like, I don't know what's moving. Is the car moving or is the wall moving?
Both.
You know, and that's the thing where I'm like, this is incredible. And I still remember that feeling I had when I first went on it, and I still get it, that shadow of it now. I also love the part when they're near the bridge and the goblin has the pumpkin bombs and he goes to throw it and Spider-Man jumps on the thing and knocks it out of his hand like a little bit and it hits the thing above you and that blows out the fire because the cart's moving back at just the right speed where you can see the pumpkin go and hit, and the timing on that is beautiful because then there's all the other scenes where you like spin around and like the laser hits the one box and starts floating and the other thing. And there's just so many of these elements that work so well together. Like it is the physical environments with the animated, and when they made it in that higher definition, which it currently is in, you know, the animation is different and everything. It's one of those rides where I'm like, that ride's like what, like 25 years old almost now or something?
Yeah.
It still could be on par with a ride that comes out today, which is like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure.
Dare I say flawless for its time? Like it is an incredible attraction. And I mean, here I go, Winnie the Pooh pooing again, but with Disney California Adventure Spider-Man attraction, it absolutely pales in comparison.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely pales in comparison. And like I have a hard time with even wanting to wait in line for the other one, and I know I have the best Spider-Man attraction back home. So Remy, I'm sorry, you're adorable and I love the food that you make, but Spider-Man is,
you know what's crazy? Remy makes me sick. There's parts in it, like I know where it is. It's when the guy reaches through to try and grab the cart for some reason. It like messes with my head.
Interesting.
And Spider-Man, like the spinning part is the one I'm always worried about, but I've kind of like figured out how to maneuver. My brain has like finally figured out to be like, okay, I know how to work around this a little bit. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing with the Spider-Man ride at DCA, I'll just say, is I feel like it does accomplish what it is. And I think it's supposed to be like this all ages, and it's supposed to be a little more of this like fun thing. And I think the problem being is that you're like, if that had come first, I think we'd feel differently about
24 years ago.
Yeah, if that ride had been made that many years ago. So you're right, but it is no, without a doubt the best Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man is also one of the best attractions, period. Like in Central Florida. It's one of those when it's good, it's great at Universal.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we've talked a lot about those. Hagrids is an example of that. Velocicoaster is an example of that. Spider-Man and then Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. I think these are some of those attractions where you're like, this is where you change the game.
Yep.
You know.
Exactly.
All right, what do you got? So that's another Universal win.
That is. Next up, we have Dudley Do-Right's Rips Off Falls versus, once again, Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
We wanted to put these two up against each other because they are, again, both like flume rides. You know, I'd even argue that I think Dudley Do-Right's is better matched against Tiana than Jurassic Park. But we felt like we needed to acknowledge it's another flume ride with a drop. Or this one is more specifically is a flume ride with a drop. I've only really done Ripside, whatever, like
Dudley Do-Right.
Once. Yeah.
I've done it like 3 times, and I don't have a fun time.
I just get so wet. It's not even like fun wet because you were just like you threw your underwear, through the socks, through the shoes, and you just like there's no comfortable way to get through this.
And I feel like the scenes and the props and the immersion of it leaves a lot to be desired. Like it's not that great. And to be honest, I mean, this could be an argument for Toon Lagoon as a whole these days, but I feel like no one is really familiar with Dudley Do-Right that much. Like it's not that relevant.
Well, I feel
I remember the Brendan Fraser live action movie.
Well, I feel like modern day audiences don't have that same exposure to classic material the way that we did because, you know, when we were kids, there was less, and the same with our parents' generation, like as there is more and more content, we'll call it, which is starting to feel like a filthy word. You know, the library grows and grows and grows, and so you see less of the material more and more, right? So, like, when we were kids, it was, you know, we'll say it's a garage full of movies. You know, it would be like walking in and being like garage full. You know, when our parents were younger, we'd be like it was a really full bookcase. You know, and now these kids, in comparison, it's a warehouse. So the likelihood of them knowing this thing from a really obscure corner of the warehouse,
wow, it's such a good analogy.
Is crazy.
That's so true.
Well, and it's sort of that thing where you're like movies, TV shows,
streaming.
I think this is why like kids who are like teenagers now, like 12, 13, 14. They're not going to see those things the same way. Like, there's not even really a thing as reruns anymore. There's no repeats. You know, when we were kids, when it was the summertime, you'd get the best episodes of the show were repeated during the summer because they wanted a new audience, right? Yeah. And even that didn't happen for very long while we were young. It was really early.
I mean, the content libraries are only getting larger. I was talking to someone the other day. They're in their early 20s, I want to say. And I brought up Dumb and Dumber because I had just watched it. It's one of my favorite movies. And she was like, oh, I haven't watched that yet. And I was like, what? She's like, I've been meaning to. And I'm like, please watch it. We could talk again afterwards.
I had friends who were like, oh, Back to the Future. They finally watched it. And they were like, it's good. And I was like, excuse me?
My heart.
They were like,
I watched Ghostbusters for the first time. And he only watched it for Sigourney Weaver. And I was like, what's wrong with you? How are we friends?
It's weird. And it's one of those things where, whatever. We could have a whole thing about this. Yeah. But yeah. So I think that's kind of the relevancy of it. I think I would give points to Rips Off Falls because it is one of the few and only, like, flume rides I've seen in my life that actually throws you down the hill. Where most of the time it's just like,
it's
here comes gravity.
Fall.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And this one I think is cool but then you're just like, pistol whipped in the face by the water.
It's a lot.
So it's a lot. So which one do I think tells their story more successfully? I think it's Tiana's.
I agree. I concur. I'm just going to echo your thoughts there so we can move on to the next big one.
You go right ahead.
Popeye's Bluto's Bilge Rat barges.
Yeah.
Versus Cali River Rapids.
Okay. I feel like, I don't know. I just don't like Cali River Rapids.
Neither do I.
My memories of that, like, I just won't do it anymore. It's just like, why is it so hot? Why is there fire on this ride?
Yeah.
This weird ride. And like, I remember
has a
like
good
not getting
message
wet,
for
but
like deforestation and conservation efforts. But this was one of the attractions at Animal Kingdom that was scaled back massively back in the day for the opening. It was supposed to be a lot longer. There was supposed to be either live or faux animals involved. And it was scaled back to what it is now. This is, once again, I just have a wait. I think Popeyes is one of the best raft rides I've ever been on. I enjoyed myself on Grizzly River Run over at DCA, but we're not comparing West Coast attractions here. But Popeyes is such a long raft ride. Like, it goes on forever, and you get soaked. So, like, if you're going for a water ride and you want to cool off on a hot day, this is a fun one.
Well, I think you put it right there. Which one's more fun?
Yeah.
And I think
that's what this list is about.
It's easy,
so,
yeah. You can just see it in people's faces.
Yes, exactly. Yep. All right. Can we move on then? All right. Dr. Doom's Fearfall versus, obviously, Tower of Terror.
Yeah, so because they don't have an indoor drop like that or thing. So I think we don't even have to really go into this conversation. It's easy. Tower of Terror. Yeah. I mean, even if whichever one you're a bigger fan of, you know, that's your thing. Like if you were Marvel purist, but it's still like there's no denying the fact that Disney built this hotel. It's in the theming behind it, the lobby behind it,
is
having
one of the most
Twilight Zone,
well-themed attractions they have.
Yeah,
easily, and it's tough because like Dr. Doom's Fearfall, it's not. I mean, it's technically a drop tower, but it's more of like the.
It's like a Six Flags ride.
The climb is the scary part because it's the anticipation as you're waiting down there and the fog builds up and then they shoot you up and then you're like slowly going down looking at the park and then it's over. Tower of Terror, like you're dropping faster than gravity and several times and it's random and there's a whole dark ride element involved. So
we know these ones are a little far away from each other. Yeah, but we still were like, we kind of needed, I feel like it's the drop. We needed to be like, what drops like this?
Yeah. So last one we have on the lineup here, we have the Incredible Hulk coaster versus Rock and Roller Coaster.
I think it's Incredible Hulk. My argument for this, and it's modern Incredible Hulk, obviously. We don't do the Hulk before. I've only done it one time. But I remember, it was like a couple of years ago. It wasn't that long ago. I remember. I think the like queue as you come in is really cool. Like, I think the story because the whole thing is like you're Bruce Banner and you're being exposed to like the gamma radiation that turns you into the Hulk. And you know, it feels it's on the border of also, I always say Six Flags type attractions. And I don't mean that in like a demeaning way. I mean it in just like these places usually have, you know, they call it the Superman or Batman or whatever. The coaster's named for a thing and it has a couple of elements to that thing and then that's what it is. You know, it's a different time and a different place that serves a purpose. But I think the Hulk still kind of has both of these worlds in it a little bit, where it is a really impressive track. It does have this like, you know, the part where you take like the dive and you kind of go under the sidewalk. You go over and near the water and stuff. And it is a long coaster. But my God, when I am on that ride, it feels like my body went into a blender and then got reassembled like I am Frankenstein.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I think Hulk is a really fun coaster if you can take it. I am one of those people who are in their early 30s and I already can't take this coaster. I don't go on this anymore, to be honest. I've tried a couple times riding in the front row to be like in the middle because I've heard that's like the best way to experience less of the jerkiness. But it's a little too shaky for me and I find myself graying out in certain areas of it and I don't like that feeling. And I come off with a headache and a backache and so
I don't like how I feel at all.
Yeah,
come off of
it stinks because I loved it when I was a lot younger, but I don't know if it's like the coaster's aged. I've aged a little of both, but I can't really do it anymore.
Rock and Roller Coaster, I do feel like it, you know, I feel like it's no knock against Aerosmith as a band or anything like that. I mean, it is, you know, when history is written and told.
It's a time.
You know, yeah. But it does feel like where you're like, you know, I imagine there's probably a lot of people who are like, why this band? Like, when was the last time there was a hit on the radio? And I don't mean that in a mean way because...
Goofy movie overlay when?
You know, exactly. I feel like if we look at the bones of the attraction, too, it's like, I don't know. I like an indoor coaster. I like the music. My problem with Rock and Roller Coaster, too short.
It is a little short. However, the queue experience and loading in like the parking garage and then the like dark ride element of the coaster with the neon and like you're racing around LA, a very non-geographically accurate LA, but it's still, still funny.
I like the cold air.
The cold air is nice. Mm-hmm. Yes. The music.
Is it a
going
thing
back
where
to
you're
enjoying
like,
myself, I find Rock and Roller Coaster more fun right now.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately, if that's what it boils down to, which one do you have more fun on?
Yeah.
I think it is Rock and Roller Coaster, but I'm not going to lie.
You can vote for Hulk if you want to. We've got some safe votes here.
Yeah, that's fine. No. I'm with you. Like, my body can't take the other one, but I can still do Rock and Roller Coaster. Also, Rock and Roller Coaster was the first upside down roller coaster I ever did, and so I have a soft spot. But I also like the launch of that one. I feel like it's sort of. I like an indoor roller coaster better than an outdoor roller coaster too. And I don't know. Maybe it's because of where I'm from in Massachusetts, because they all live. Steven Tyler's lives in Kingston or something. I don't know, so, there's a little bit, it's one of those where I'm like, do we know Aerosmith more because of where I live? Or is it,
I know Aerosmith more because of it being at Rock and Roller Coaster.
Because of Armageddon. You were just the biggest.
Oh,
you were
yes.
in that fan
I remember that music video. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, do you know what my first inverted roller coaster was?
What?
Dueling Dragons.
Oh.
Which was rare because I was not a Universal kid.
Or two loves up above.
But yeah, and once I did Dueling Dragons, I knew that I could tell my parents, I can do Rock and Roller Coaster now.
Oh, okay.
I can do anything. I can go on Space Mountain. I can do Rock and Roller Coaster. Yeah. All right. So that
I think we're both in agreement on Rock and Roller Coaster.
Okay. So we're okay. Just one vote for that.
So I don't think we didn't have any ties then. Or is that the last one?
No, that's the last one.
Yeah. So no ties.
No ties, and we are at a clean sweep, 5-4. Universal versus Disney. Universal takes with 5 votes.
What were the 4 wins for Disney?
4. So we had Velocicoaster versus Expedition Everest. Velocicoaster took that one. Cat in the Hat versus Pooh. Pooh took that one. Hagrids versus Tron. Hagrids won. Jurassic Park versus Tiana's. Jurassic Park won. Spider-Man versus Remy's. Spider-Man won. Dudley Do Right versus Tiana's. Tiana's won. Popeyes versus Cali Over Rapids. Popeyes won. Dr. Doom's Fearfall versus Tower of Terror. Tower of Terror won. And then Rock and Roller Coaster beat out.
You didn't read back Ripsaw Falls versus Tiana.
Yeah, I did. Dudley Do Right.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't say Ripsaw Falls.
I think I was thinking. I was
abbreviating. Sorry.
Pluto.
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 Yeah.
Jeez Louise. I'm losing my brain here. Wow. All right. Universal won this one.
They sure did.
And kind of definitively. It wasn't like we needed it. We didn't have
trouble. We didn't need the audience participation this time.
I mean, there was a couple, we're like, oh, we got to sit and think about it for a hot second. But I think it's pretty solid. I mean, there are some majorly incredible attractions at Islands of Adventure that if you have never been, I think are absolutely worth the ticket to go.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's ultimately what we're saying. I think this was fun. Thank you, Chloe, for helping me with that list there.
This was fun.
Hopefully we'll do some more of these in the future. I think, like we said, we were talking restaurants. Maybe we'll do some hotels, pit some of that stuff against each other. And just for some fun, we can be a fan of both. We like both, clearly, as you can tell. If there are some of these that you disagree with, we'd love to get that. Leave it in the comments. Get in touch with us somehow if you're listening. I should probably tell you how. That's what I'm like. Somehow, but I don't know the email anymore. That's out of my pay grade, sort of a thing. But thanks, everybody, for watching or listening to this. If you are watching this on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up. Leave us those comments. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing that. Click that bell. You get notified whenever we publish any sort of fun content. And if you are listening to this, please rate and review the podcast whenever you get an opportunity. And we'd love to get suggestions for future topics of the shows. What do you want to know about Universal? How can we help you plan a better Universal vacation? How can we help you have the best experience that you can have? What tips and tricks do you want to know about? Please let us know that. And I think that is going to do it for us. Don't forget about Dreams Unlimited Travel when planning your next Universal vacation. And a big shout out again to our Patreon supporters. We couldn't do this without you. I've got nothing else to say other than be excellent to each other.
Bye.